The top stories tonight in Y News. Mega Manila revert to Modified Enhanced Community Quarantine or MECQ from August 4 to 18.
Mass transport in Metro Manila suspended again.
The Duterte administration responds to the call of medical frontliners, but Malacanang questions the timing of the Medical Society's appeal to President Rodrigo Duterte. At least 3 witnesses to attend Senate probe on alleged corruption in PhilHealth, while Senate President Tito Soto assures more benefits for healthcare workers in Bayanihan to law.
Melbourne in Australia braces for more business closures amid tougher restrictions.
Specific COVID-19 countermeasures may be needed for the Tokyo Paralympics, organizers say. Good evening, Philippines and the world. Today is Monday, August 3rd, 2020. I am Harleen Delgado.
Join us in the next hour as we deliver today's top stories around the globe. I'm Angelo Castro III.
We are also seen in 1,935 satellite monitoring centers nationwide and via live streaming worldwide through the UNTV News and Rescue social media accounts. And of course, our website, untvweb.com. I am William P.
First in the news, President Rodrigo Duterte approves his cabinet's recommendation to implement Modified Enhanced Community Quarantine or MECQ over Metro Manila, Bulacan, Laguna, Cavite, and Rizal or Mega Manila. This move comes after medical frontliners made an appeal for a timeout to refine pandemic control strategies. The MECQ in Mega Manila will be effective from midnight of August 4 until August 18. Residents may expect stricter measures again. Rosalie Cos tells us why.
Under Modified Enhanced Community Quarantine, a strict stay-at-home order shall be observed in all households in Metro Manila, Rizal, Bulacan, Laguna, and Cavite. The movement of all residents shall be limited only to accessing essential goods, services, and permitted industries. Some establishments are allowed to operate in full capacity, such as hospitals, health and emergency services, manufacturers of medicines, medical supplies, and equipment. Industries related to agriculture will also remain open. Delivery and courier services, media establishments, business process outsourcing, e-commerce companies, and others will also be not hampered. However, more offices are allowed to have their 50% operational capacity. This include manufacturing industries such as beverages, electrical machinery, wood products and furniture, non-metallic products, textiles and clothing, wearing apparels, other real estate activities, administrative and office support, other financial services, legal and accounting services, and others. Malls and commercial centers not related to leisure activities are partially allowed to operate, while government agencies including government-owned and controlled corporations and local government units shall operate under skeleton workforce and alternative work arrangements. Public transportation will again be suspended. Companies permitted to remain open may provide shuttle services for their employees. Backriding is prohibited again. Mass gatherings are not allowed, though religious gatherings are limited to not more than 5 persons. Tourist destinations, entertainment and amusement hubs, as well as gyms, fitness studios, sports facilities, and personal care services will be closed again. Limited individual outdoor exercises are allowed. President Rodrigo Duterte has said everyone must observe extra caution. He also reiterated the national government has no more funds for another round of assistance for Filipinos.
Remember, Filipinos, na the time of giving the assistance or the stipend or your allowance is no longer there. We cannot give you that anymore. Tapos na yun.
However, Malacanang says the Congress has to pass another law to allot budget for another round of assistance under MECQ. For the meantime, local government units as well as the Department of Social Welfare and Development can provide assistance. The palace also says the MECQ declaration over the NCR and other provinces does not mean failure of government's COVID-19 response. This is only to respond to the requests of healthcare workers and intensify the strategies of the government against coronavirus, such as providing additional isolation facilities.
This is primarily to accede to the demand of the frontliners for a break, for a timeout, at pagsasamantalahan lang po ng gobyerno yung timeout para mas mapainting pa po yung ating testing, tracing, and treatment.
Rosa Licoz, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
A former government special advisor is not expecting a total stop of COVID-19 transmission even if the government re-implements MECQ. He urges the public to voluntarily submit themselves to stricter.
Former COVID-19 National Task Force Advisor Dr. Tony Liachon had recommended the reimposition of enhanced community quarantine in Metro Manila when he was invited in the Malacanang Palace on July 15. Last weekend, medical professionals expressed the same recommendation to the national government. The aim is to stop the further mounting of COVID-19 cases. But because of economic considerations, the government has decided to reinforce modified ECQ instead. But Dr. Liachon welcomes this decision.
Now, the MECQ, meron siyang activity and mobility na 50%. Hindi to totally may stop yung transmission. But, we will observe in the next 2 weeks whether the MECQ will arrest the transmission.
He added the figure of COVID-19 cases is alarming considering that there are unreported cases or even deaths linked to the new coronavirus.
When they go to the emergency room, they are severely sick. Then ma-intubate na sila and they die. Or they are rejected from the hospital, so they die at home. Or they are don't have access to RT-PCR dahil mahal. So ang daming namamatay dyan na ganyan.
Now, Dr. Liachon campaigns to the public to submit themselves to a voluntary ECQ, especially the old and the sick.
Tayo na magboluntaryo mismo, wag na tayo makadagdag. Ang lumabas na lang, yung talagang kailangan lumabas, yung mga 50% ng workforce. Pero yung iba, yung 25% doon sa GCQ, wag na po. Wag na. Kasi pag nagkasakit kayo, wala nang pera nga ang government eh. Tapos, baka magkasakit pa yung mga doktor.
Dr. Liachon also highlights the importance of adhering to the minimum health standards, including wearing a face mask and face shield and using disinfectant for protection. Ray Pelayo, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
President Rodrigo Duterte approves the recommendation to issue work and quarantine passes to limit the movement of public, especially in places under the localized lockdown. Now that Metro Manila, Bulacan, Cavite, Laguna, and Rizal are back to MECQ, the movement of people is expected to be limited to accessing essential services. According to presidential spokesperson Harry Roque, it is within the discretion of the local government unit to release new quarantine passes. Workers and establishments permitted to operate must present an ID. The validity of ATF IDs is also extended.
Yung quarantine passes po, 2 lang kada pamilya. Yung mga work permits naman po pwede po mag-issue ang mga local government units din po niyan. Pero na-include po yan kasi ang assumption natin ng IATF ay wala pong MECQ, no? That was initially for localized lockdowns na GCQ, no? So, I think for now, importante ipakita yung kanilang ID at yung ID naman po nila ay magpapatunay kung sila ay nagtatrabaho sa industriya na pinapayagang mag-operate under MECQ.
Residents in Mega Manila with restricted movement must expect police checkpoints again. Our police correspondent Leah Ilagan will tell us why.
The Philippine National Police will implement strict inspection across Metro Manila again, which is now under MECQ. The PNP will install quarantine control points between the borders of the cities under MECQ. Joint Task Force Coronavirus Shield Commander, Police Lieutenant General Guillermo Eleazar says the police will ensure that minimum health protocols will be implemented even inside their vehicles. Only the people whose names are on the list of authorized persons outside of residence or APOR will be allowed to cross borders. Non-APOR residents will not be allowed to move from one city to another even for buying goods.
Ang inaalam kasi natin doon, sino ba ang mga allowed na lumabas base doon sa mga permitted industries doon sa quarantine status na yon. At sa pagbabantay natin through our checkpoints at saka pati yung police visibility sa mga lugar na establishment na open na, gusto natin masiguro na yung mga nasa labas are authorized or work-related yung travel nila.
Authorized persons outside of residence need to present their company ID, employment certificate, or IATF ID at the checkpoints. Eleazar adds they will just wait for the quarantine pass the local governments will issue.
Itong ating mga checkpoint sa mga boundary ng ating mga cities and municipalities, hindi nila papayagan lumampas. Doon ang mga hindi APOR, meaning kung mamimili ka lang ng mga gamit mo, doon ka lang sa lugar mo.
Curfew will also be strictly implemented.
Ang ating pong pulis, ang Joint Task Force COVID Sierra dito para magpatupad nitong mga batas at mga regulasyon, pero hinihingi namin implementation by cooperation ng bawat isa.
Eleazar also ensures there are enough PNP personnel to be deployed even though more than 2,000 policemen are now infected with COVID-19. Leia Ilagan, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
Public transport in Metro Manila and its 4 neighboring provinces is suspended again. But a transport expert is not in favor of this move. Joanne Nano explains why.
As Metro Manila, Rizal, Laguna, Cavite, and Bulacan revert to MECQ due to a steady spike in COVID-19 cases, the Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases suspends the operation of public transportation starting tomorrow until August 18. The suspension includes MRT3, LRT Lines 1 and 2, Philippine National Railways, buses, jeepneys, UV Express vans, taxis, and transport network vehicle services. Tricycles are also prohibited, although exemptions may apply depending on the regulations of respective local government units. On the other hand, private vehicles with limited capacity, bicycles, e-scooters, and motorcycles will be allowed. However, pillion riding will be suspended again. The Department of Transportation assures the free rides for medical frontliners and other essential workers will continue. The government advises private companies to hire public transportation to be used as shuttle services for their employees who are still required to report to work physically.
Kaya hinihikayat po ng LTFRB ang mga kumpanya na mag-hire o mag-lease ng mga pampublikong sasakyan gaya ng mga jeepneys, buses at UV Express na hindi makakabiyahe ngayong MECQ bilang o para gamitin bilang mga shuttle services. Bibigyan sila ng prioridad ng LTFRB.
Domestic flights are also prohibited while international flights will be limited. Inter-island travel is also not allowed in areas under MECQ, so trips through sea vessels are also suspended. But for transport advocate Robert C., public transport should not be suspended even if several areas revert to MECQ.
Kung walang public transport, ang nangyayari, we enhance yung crowding. And crowding is the biggest threat to yung health situation. Pag may crowding sa loob ng mga vehicles, pag may crowding sa mga bus stops at bus stations, we will have more active virus transmission. So, pag mas maraming public transport, mas konti yung situations ng crowding.
Now, as their operation is suspended again, many PUV drivers are upset as they will not be able to earn money to get by yet again.
Manghihingi na lang po sa kalsada uli nito, yung mga dating gawin na ginagawa namin. Yun na lang po gagawin namin uli kasi wala ko kaming makain dito sa loob eh. Wala akong magagawa eh, ganun talaga eh. Back to zero na naman kami. Ganun pa rin, gutom pa rin. Gutom na nga kahit may biyahe, ang hirap ng biyahe tapos mawawala pa yung biyahe ulit.
Joanano, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Meanwhile, the country's Department of Health says that 3,226 new cases were reported today, based on tests done by 66 out of 94 laboratories. That raises the total confirmed cases of coronavirus infection in the Philippines to 106,330. There are 38,405 active cases remaining. Of those, 90.3% are in mild condition. More than 1.46 million individuals in the country have been tested for COVID-19 based on DOH data. We have lost 46 more patients, but through our fervent prayers, medical interventions, and sacrifices of our medical frontliners, 275 more people have won their battle against the invisible enemy. That brings the total recoveries nationwide to 65,821. Thanks be to God.
As the Duterte administration responds to the appeals made by medical frontliners, Malacanang questions the timing of the release of the healthcare workers' requests. Our Malacanang correspondent Rosalie Cos will tell us why.
The government will approve the hiring of additional healthcare workers to augment the current workforce looking after COVID-19 patients in the country. President Duterte now also appeals for help from the Armed Forces of the Philippines.
So, it's time to give more to the people. All nurses sa uniform sector will have to work. And we can always ask for volunteers. Then I am asking Secretary Lorenzana to call a mobilization of doctors and nurses and those who can help. Kung yan na lang ang maasahan namin, or I might outrightly call for all reservists to work. Yan na lang.
The government will also look for funds for the additional benefits, such as risk allowance for private sector healthcare workers who are treating COVID-19 patients. The amount of 10 to 15,000 pesos for every healthcare worker that gets sick, free life insurance, free accommodation, transportation, and frequent testing. However, President Duterte also made an appeal to healthcare workers to stretch their patience, especially for the welfare of the public. The government is also working on providing assistance to medical frontliners.
We are not actually inutil. Tsaka next time, as a matter of courtesy, not to me, I don't need it, but to the government, kasi gagastusin natin yung pera ng tao. The next time, huwag na niya akong parigin-rigin ng revolution. Naku, Diyos ko. Yan ang mas delikado sa COVID. Kaya kung mag-revolution kayo, you will give me the free ticket to stage a counter-revolution. How I wish you would do it.
Meanwhile, the palace explains where the president was coming from when he made such statement. According to presidential spokesperson Harry Roque, the timing of the release of the healthcare workers' appeal to the president is questionable, as it was publicized first before the president received it.
Ang konteksto po na lumabas ito ay sunod-sunod po kasi yung pagtawag po ni Secretary Drilon na failure ang IATF, sinusugan po yan ni VP Leni Robredo, kasabay po yung kumakalat na revolution song. So ang presidente po, sabi niya, kung talaga yung mga nanggugulo, yung mga nais magsamantala sa pandemic, na gusto siyang palitan through revolution, sige na po, gawin na natin ngayon.
The palace official reiterates the president has already responded to the medical society's appeal. Rosa Licos, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
An employers group anticipates the impact of the re-implementation of MECQ, especially on small businesses. Meanwhile, an economist and lawmaker urges the government to reboot its COVID-19 plan for the MECQ period. Ray Pelayo details why.
The re-implementation of modified ECQ in Metro Manila and nearby provinces may result in a total shutdown or closure of micro-enterprises. This is what the president of the Employers Confederation of the Philippines or ECOP, Sergio Ortiz Luis Jr. anticipates. Luis notes that small businesses have just resumed their operation when the government loosened the community quarantine.
90% ng mga enterprise natin micro eh. Marami doon nagbukas pag sinara mo ng 2 linggo yun, marami na naman yung mahihirapan doon. Maraming mawawala ng trabaho talagang permanently.
Meanwhile, an economist, Marikina 2nd District Representative Estela Kimbo, says the Bayanihan 2 should be passed immediately to assist small businesses. The lawmaker emphasizes the importance of providing assistance to all to convince them to stay at home and follow the health protocols. Kimbo adds that people are moving about to seek food for their families.
Pag hindi mo bibigyan ng ayuda yung taong dapat mag-quarantine, ay hindi talaga siya magpapa-quarantine. In fact, hindi na nga lang niya aalamin, hindi na lang siya magpapadest, diba? Kahit na may symptoms na siya.
Kimbo notes that during MECQ, it is important to calibrate the data country's health department is sharing to warn the public. She cited that in the past months, the DOH uses different methods of reporting of COVID-19 cases and hospital capacities that resulted in confusion.
Kung tignan mo yung DOH website, ang nakasulat doon 50% pa available. Pero kasi, national data yun. Akala mo, marami pang hospital beds, so pwedeng sabihin mo, hindi na bala panatag ang loob ko. Na kung magkasakit man ako, pero ako mapupuntahan ng hospital. Ang katotohanan is wala na kung ikaw ay nasa NCR. So kung yung tamang data ay na-represent sa'yo, mas mag-iingat ka.
During the MECQ period, the local government should be empowered to search among their constituents those with COVID-19 symptoms or possibly infected with the virus. Ray Pelayo, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
For the medical society's point of view, like the Philippine College of Physicians, their request for an ECQ from August 1 to 15 may not have been granted, but the implementation of MECQ in response to their request of timeout is a great help. Aiko Miguel explains why.
It may not be what they asked for, but in the 2-week modified enhanced community quarantine period, the medical community will be given a chance to recalibrate their pandemic control strategies.
From 2 weeks, although it's very short, but it's very long for us since we're going to take a little time for us to really, slow down the transmission of virus. And this is what we want to really achieve or in the next 14 days and beyond.
According to Dr. Joseph Santiago, president of the Philippine Medical Association, aside from a timeout, they are also calling for unified standard minimum health protocols in the country to prevent the further transmission of the virus. The medical societies also clarified they aim to be in unity with the Interagency Task Force for a better COVID-19 response. According to the country's health department, the implementation of a 2-week MECQ will make way for the government to plan better solutions and strategies for its response to the crisis. But this doesn't mean that in 2 weeks' time, there will be a flattening of the curve of COVID-19 infection. Everyone should consider their social responsibilities.
It's not really to flatten the curve. Ito po ay para lang po magkaroon ng breather at makapag-reorganize and re-strategize tayo at mas mapaigting natin yung mga ginagawa natin. Katulad po ng sabi ko kanina, with these 2 weeks, we will use it well. Bababa po tayo sa mga local government units kung saan talaga nangyayari ang ating mga infection or transmission at bibigyan natin sila ng guidance.
Based on the DOH data, there are currently 887 clustering of cases in the country. Clustering means 2 or 3 positive individuals in a family who may potentially transmit the virus, or 2 barangays in a municipality with active cases. Majority of clusters still come from communities with 741 clusters. There are also clustering of COVID-19 cases in jails, hospitals or health facilities and in offices. Aiko Miguel, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Some health worker groups are not satisfied with additional benefits the president promised to them. They also clarify they are not calling for a revolution against the government. Dante Amento tells us why.
Some members of the medical community in the country are not satisfied with what they heard from the president on the promise of additional benefits for health workers such as risk and transportation allowances and free accommodations. Filipino Nurses United or FNU President Maristela Abenujar says this is because the current administration did not even address their primary pleas. Those are additional health workers, free COVID-19 testing for all health workers, and enough supplies of personal protective equipment. Abenujar adds, due to the low quality of PPEs, about 5,000 health workers have contracted the virus and 38 of them have died.
Pangalawa, satisfied ba? Paano masasatisfy? Wala pa ngang ginagawa, hindi pa nga ina-address. So, hindi pa natutugunan ang mga basic na pangangailangan.
Meanwhile, some medical groups clarify they are not calling for a revolution against the government. They say they are just expressing their distress to the public. In fact, they have sent their positions to the Department of Health and the IATF, but they have not received any answers yet.
We just want appropriate and concrete medical and health interventions. We never said revolution. So, wag ibahin yung kwento.
The Community Medicine Practitioners and Advocate Associations or COMPAS also says President Duterte should be open to criticisms. The government must admit its failures and will make necessary recalibration of strategies to prevent the further spread of COVID-19.
Pwede namang walang lockdown, basta ipakita lang ng gobyerno ang kanyang political will para hindi bulag ang pagtugon at paglaban sa COVID, yung ating matagal ng kahilingan ng mass testing.
Dante Amento, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
The Senate Committee of the Whole will push through with its investigation on the alleged irregularities hounding the PhilHealth. This is despite the 2-week lockdown in Senate starting tomorrow until August 18 in support to the call of medical frontliners. According to Senate President Vicente Soto III, the hearing will be on a hybrid format wherein resource persons, witnesses, and several senators will be present physically at the session hall. One of the invited resource persons is PhilHealth CEO and President Ricardo Morales.
We seek to get the answers to the questions of how and where these funds were spent. The important thing, bottom line, is we need to amend the law. Apparently, we need to amend the law creating the PhilHealth to prevent similar occurrences in the future.
Meanwhile, Senator Panfilo Lacson says at least 3 witnesses will testify regarding the alleged corruption within the agency. They are PhilHealth Board Member Alejandro Cabading, former Head Executive Assistant of Morales, Etrobal Laborte, and PhilHealth Anti-Fraud Legal Officer Attorney Thorson Montes Keith, who stepped down from post due to massive corruption and other irregularities in PhilHealth based on the copy of his resignation letter leaked to the media last month. Lacson adds some of the major issues that will be tackled are the interim reimbursement mechanism, the financial statements of PhilHealth, and the alleged overpricing in the purchase of information and communications technology or ICT equipment.
Matagal na rin ito na nakikiusap yung iba sa kanila kung pwedeng mabisigan ng Senate kasi they felt so helpless na yung PhilHealth is still very much controlled by the mafia.
On the other hand, Soto says the deliberations of the bicameral conference committee will also not be affected by the 2-week ECQ status in the Senate. The Senate leader further assures they will include the additional benefits for healthcare workers during the BICAM deliberation for the Bayanihan to Recover as One Act, also known as the Bayanihan 2.
So the issues of risk allowance, life insurance, free accommodations, free transportation, free and frequent COVID testings, and then 10,000 or 15,000 pesos for every health worker that gets sick, additional para sa mga nilagay natin, yes. I assure you we will incorporate it in Bayanihan 2.
Meanwhile, several simulations show that barriers used in motorcycle pillion riding is more prone to COVID-19 infection. Experts also explain that using a motorcycle barrier poses adverse effects on safety, the economy, and environment. Joining us tonight is Asher Gadapan Jr. reporting, who did his own simulation of using a motorcycle barrier, will join us tonight live. Yes, Asher, go ahead.
Arlene, despite the call of several motorcycle drivers and concerned groups, authorities implement the requirement of safety barriers for motorcycle pillion riding to avoid further spread of COVID-19. The National Task Force Against COVID-19, or NTF, said the decision was a result of a thorough study and is safe to use as long as the approved design is followed. On the other hand, some riders say they experienced dangers when riding with a barrier on. The Philippine Society of Mechanical Engineers, or PSME, agree that barriers pose danger to motorcycle riding. These experts presented how barriers affect the flow of wind against a moving motorcycle through computational fluid dynamics, or CFD simulation, which engineers and analysts use to predict how liquid and gases will perform. According to engineer Simeon Perez, National Vice President for External Affairs, vortex or whirlpool of wind generated from the barrier between the driver and the pillion, or the ride pillion, and behind them is more apparent than motorcycle riders not using a barrier. It is possible that aerosol contaminated with COVID-19 may enter the vortex, which poses more risk to the pillion ride as it may be inhaled.
Pag pumunta doon sa likod, magkakaroon ng vortex motion yun doon sa likodan ng barrier. At doon magkakaroon ng paikot-ikot yung hangin. At kung sinasabi natin na yung virus ay daladala, if it is airborne, lalo na magiging delikado yung pasahero niya.
Arlene, UNTV News and Rescue also tried to show how the flow of winds behaves in the pillion riding, and vortex between the rider and pillion ride, as well as their air resistance against the barrier, are evident. PSME also explains that additional resistance in a moving motorcycle may also result to accidents while driving.
Nagkikreate yan ng tinatawag nating aerodynamic forces. So yung aerodynamic forces, ito yung tinatawag nating drag and lift doon sa motorcycle, which is in motion. So pag nagkaroon ng ganon, ang mako-compromise natin dyan is yung stability ng movement ng motorcycle, and eventually it might get an accident.
Aside from accidents, fuel consumption and smoke emission are greater, which have an effect on the economy and the environment. Arlene?
So, Asher, given these safety concerns on the use of motorcycle barriers, what is the alternative solution that motorcycle riders and experts suggest?
Arlene, they explain that using a face mask and a full-face motorcycle helmet are enough to protect them from acquiring COVID-19. Regular disinfection should also be observed as often as necessary. Arlene?
All right, thank you so much, Asher Gadapan Jr., for that report. Jago and William, we're on board the UNTV radio mobile booth and we are here in Commonwealth Avenue in Batasan Hills, Quezon City. Let's take a look at the situation on the road. For motorists coming from Elliptical Road going to Fairview, brace yourselves for a moderate to heavy traffic flow along Commonwealth Avenue. We also have a moderate to heavy traffic at the other side of the road from vehicles coming from Fairview going to Elliptical Road to EDSA, Quezon Avenue. And for our weather update. Typhoon Habagat, or formerly known as Dindo, exited the Philippine Area of Responsibility or PAR this morning. State Weather Bureau Pagasa says as of 3 p.m., the weather system was located at 665 kilometers north of extreme northern Luzon, outside PAR, moving northwest at 20 kilometers per hour. Ilocos Region, Cordillera Administrative Region, and Batanes and Babuyan Group of Islands will experience cloudy skies with scattered rains and thunderstorms due to the southwest monsoon. Meanwhile, a low-pressure area has been spotted 365 kilometers east-southeast of Davao City. The trough of the LPA will bring cloudy skies with scattered rains and thunderstorms over Mindanao and eastern Visayas. On the other hand, Metro Manila and the rest of the country will have a partly cloudy skies to at times cloudy with isolated rain showers due to localized thunderstorms. Possible flash floods or landslides may occur during severe thunderstorms.
A man was arrested by authorities in San Juan City for issuing fake travel authorities. Meanwhile, the San Juan government will issue new quarantine passes following the MECQ order for Metro Manila. Vincent Arboleda will tell us why.
The San Juan Police Station received information last July 31 from a concerned citizen that an individual was issuing fake travel passes bearing the signature of the San Juan Chief of Police to people who planned to travel. After a follow-up operation, the San Juan Police was able to arrest the suspect named Leonardo Puno, a liaison officer of Barangay West Crame in San Juan.
Sakto po, nung siya po ay naaresto, hawak po niya yung falsified documents na nakapirma po ako. At yun po yung ginagamit na travel authority para po makapunta sa ibang lugar. Ito po ay talagang peke dahil pag kinunan po ng picture mismo yung dokumento, iba po yung lumalabas na number do sa QR code.
Santos explains that according to the information given to them, the suspect was able to dispose more than 20 fake travel authorities. But according to the suspect, his action was driven by pity.
Naawa po ako sa isang babae na kumukuha ng travel authority dahil po madaling araw po ang alis niya. Gabi po siya kumuha ng travel authority.
Puno also denied making money out of his doing. Authorities have filed a case for falsification of public documents against the suspect with a maximum of a 6-year imprisonment and a fine of not more than 5,000 pesos. Due to this incident, the San Juan City LGU will now issue a new quarantine pass.
We have to devise a system wherein magkakaroon tayo ng uniform quarantine pass sapagkat kung kanya-kanyang quarantine pass lamang ang mga barangay, posibleng marami dito ay napepeke rin ang kanilang mga staff at yan ang delikado.
Residents with old quarantine passes will be given 5 days as grace period to process their new passes. The government has advised the public that travel authorities are free. A person only needs to bring a photocopy of a valid ID and health clearance and bring the documents to their police station to avail of travel authority. Vincent Arboleda, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
The Senate is committed to pass on time the proposed 4.5 trillion peso national budget for 2021. That's according to Senator Sonny Angara. The lawmaker who chairs the Senate Committee on Finance says this is to ensure the uninterrupted delivery of services and implementation of programs in addressing the COVID-19 pandemic. According to Angara, they don't want a repeat of a delayed national budget, just like what happened happened last year, which led to serious delays in the implementation of key programs and slower economic growth. The senator adds they will start working on the measure as soon as the copy of the National Expenditure Program is submitted by the palace.
The Armed Forces of the Philippines met its 54th Chief of Staff today, who calls for unity against terrorism, pandemic, fear, and deception. Leah Ilagan details why.
General Filimon Santos Jr. retired today as the Chief of Staff of the Armed Forces of the Philippines. Lieutenant General Gilbert Gapay formally assumed office as the AFP's 54th Chief. Lieutenant General Gapay says he will ask for the unity and support of the people just like General Emilio Aguinaldo.
Today, as I assume the 54th Chief of Staff, Armed Forces of the Philippines, I am making similar call on our fellow Filipinos to join us in our fight against terrorism, fear, deception, and a pandemic.
He also assures the continued support of the military to the government's fight against COVID-19 while ensuring peace and the security of the country.
As your new Chief of Staff of the Armed Forces, I will hit the ground running to sustain the momentum in winning the peace, stability, and development, embodying a world-class armed forces that is a source of national pride.
He also promises a professional AFP.
Salamat po sa inyong pagtitiwala. Ang inyong sandatahang lakas ay patuloy na magiging isang institusyon ng mga marangal, profesional at tunay na maasahan. Makakaasa po kayo na amin pang pagbubutihin ang aming serbisyo.
General Filimon Santos Jr. meanwhile thanks the AFP for his 38 years in serving the Filipino people.
As I step down from my military career, I look to the future with this simple song. I trust in you, Lord. You are my God. My time is in your hands. Muli, taos puso ako nagpapasalamat sa tiwala ninyong ibinigay sa akin at sa aking kakayanang mamuno bilang ika-53 puno ng kalupunan sa Sandatahang Lakas ng Pilipinas.
The AFP commits to its continued support to the Philippine National Police and the Philippine Drug Enforcement Agency in fighting illegal drugs. Leah Ilagan, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
And let's now take a closer look at the updated count of coronavirus cases around the world. The COVID-19 pandemic has now reached a total of over 18 million confirmed cases in 188 countries, regions, and sovereignty. This comes after 228,000 new confirmed COVID-19 cases were reported by various countries. Of the world's total tally, more than 9.6 million came from the Americas and over 3.3 million from Europe. The fast-spreading disease has claimed close to 690,000 lives, while over 10.7 million patients across the globe have recovered from the new coronavirus infection, thanks be to God. And for the news abroad, here's Elsie Marcos live from Auckland, New Zealand. Good evening, Elsie. What have you got for us tonight?
Diego, I will tell you why Auckland Airport being split into separate zones and why Melbourne braces for more business closure amid tougher restrictions. Also, a Lebanese minister resigns from office.
Go ahead, Elsie. Please tell us why.
New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern remains cautious on a potential travel bubble, despite the revelation today that Auckland Airport is being split into separate zones in preparation for safe travel bubbles. Ardern said there was a lot of pressure on the government to open a travel bubble. However, she said it had to be done with caution to protect the Pacific Islands. Airports were high-risk zones, so the government needed to be absolutely sure there was no interaction between groups before a Pacific travel bubble was set up. PM Adran and Health Minister Chris Hipkins spoke this afternoon at the final post-cabinet press conference ahead of the election on September 19. She has also spoken about new COVID-19 messaging for New Zealand and shed light on how the virus response will be maintained in the lead up to the election. According to her, the COVID-19 response would continue and the cabinet will meet once a fortnight. The Ministry of Health would still release its daily updates. Director General of Health Ashley Bloomfield and the Health Minister will hold a weekly press conference. Today, there were 2 new cases of COVID-19 in managed isolation. Bloomfield said New Zealanders need to continue to be vigilant against the threat of COVID-19. Meanwhile, the Republic of Kosovo Prime Minister Abdullah Hoti said on Sunday he has contracted COVID-19 and will self-isolate at home for 2 weeks. According to his Facebook post, he has no symptoms except a very mild cough. Hoti's government has faced criticism for not doing enough to curb the spread of the novel coronavirus, with the small Balkan country reporting a sharp increase in cases in the past few days, including 13 deaths on Sunday. Around 9,000 people have been infected with the new coronavirus and 249 have died since mid-March, when the first cases with the virus were reported in the small Southeast Europe state. Melbourne, Australia's second biggest city, today entered its first of tougher restrictions to contain the spread of a resurgent coronavirus. Residents brace for further announcements on business closures. On Sunday, Victoria declared state of emergency and imposed a nightly curfew for the capital as part of the country's harshest movement restrictions to date. Few people were out and about in the city center on Monday morning, and traffic volumes thinned to half of what were already light flows. The police have been given powers to ensure people are complying with public health directions. Australia has recorded 17,748 cases and 208 deaths as of today. Of the total confirmed coronavirus cases, more than 67% come from the state of Victoria, or 11,557 confirmed cases, the highest down under, according to government data. Let's now take a closer look at the updated count of coronavirus cases in countries worst hit by the pandemic. U.S. COVID-19 cases top 4.66 million, while death cases linked to the disease exceed 154,000. The USA, according to government analysis, there are 1,404 cases per 100,000 people in the USA. California alone, the state with the most cases of coronavirus infection, has more than 500,000 cases. Meanwhile, in Brazil, notably, there are more than 2 million recoveries from the disease. Meanwhile, India's cases top 1.8 million, with more than 1.1 million recoveries. Lebanon's Foreign Minister Nassaf Hiti resigned today over what he described as lack of political will to reform as his nation wrestles with the financial crisis posing the biggest threat to stability since 1975 to 1990 civil war. Foreign donors have made it clear there will be no aid until Beirut enacts long-stalled reforms to tackle state waste and corruption, root causes of the collapse. Talks with the International Monetary Fund, or IMF, have been put on hold amid a row over the scale of financial losses. Given the absence of an effective will to achieve structural, comprehensive reform, which our society and the international community have urged us to do, I have decided to resign, Hiti said in a statement. And those are the reasons behind the news here in New Zealand and in other parts of the globe. Back to you, William.
Yes, thank you, Elsie, and to the rest of our UNTV News and Rescue team in Auckland, New Zealand. Stay safe, all of you.
Philadelphia Eagles coach Doug Peterson has tested positive for COVID-19, the National Football League or NFL team announced on Sunday. The Eagles said that 52-year-old Peterson was asymptomatic and self-isolating in line with the league's protocols. Any individuals in close contact with Peterson at the team's facility have been notified and will continue with daily testing procedures and compliance with all protocols before returning to the facility. Peterson becomes the second NFL coach to have tested positive after New Orleans Saints coach Sean Payton said he had contracted the virus in March. NFL training camps opened across the country last week, with the season scheduled to start on September 10. The Paralympics were due to begin later this month but have now been pushed back until 2021 because of the global coronavirus pandemic. Now, organizers are faced with logistic concerns. Mariela Toza tells us why.
Organizers of the Paralympic Games are faced with the logistical challenge of transporting para-athletes while maintaining safety measures against the virus. The Games were set to stage 539 events at 22 different venues and feature thousands of impaired athletes. According to Games Delivery Officer Hidemasa Nakamura, if there is extra time required to prevent density of people, they will consider the details and reflect this in a new schedule. There might be changes to the schedule, he added. The postponement has wreaked havoc on athletes' preparations, but Japanese para-taekwondo athlete Mitsuya Tanaka, who joined the news conference remotely, hopes the Games can show the world that coronavirus can be defeated.
I think showing ourselves, making the effort and taking on the challenge with courage is something we can contribute to the world. Once COVID-19 settles, it will be a good opportunity for us to show we have won over COVID-19. This is something I can show as a para-athlete.
Organizers announced on Monday that the schedule will remain largely the same as planned next year, with the opening ceremony of the Paralympic Games taking place on August 24.
Next summer, delivery of the Games with Paralympians showcasing their abilities and shining will truly demonstrate the resilience and determination of mankind. I expect that this will be an opportunity to light up hope to the world.
Mariela Toza, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
And those are the reasons behind the news, August 3, 2020. I am Harleen Delgado. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
And I am William Theo. Because we need to know, we will always ask why. Have a great evening, everyone.